Welcome to Harbor Rock Wealth Management's Planning Tip. My name is Ruben Smith, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and partner, Jimmy Lester. Welcome back. Oh, the crowd goes wild. Wow.
Little, I'm like I'm like trying to act as producer on this one with the
Do you want the
sound
effects? All right.
I miss those, but yeah, good to see you all again. Glad to be here with you again. And this is us getting back into our planning tips, and we did a recent podcast with Jake.
Yep.
Getting
Yep.
getting good reviews and feedback, and
Yeah, man. Yeah.
so yeah, this is good to be back on this side and to your left.
Yeah. I
And
like it.
diving into some good topics.
Yeah, we've taken a bit of a hiatus, as we talked about with the podcast and planning tips, but it's we've kind of committed to ourselves to get back in it. We have a lot of ideas for the planning tips. It's just a matter of getting back in the groove. So here we go.
Yeah, and these aren't just for us, or for you rather. They're for us too. I mean,
Sure.
they make us think about things that might not be in front of us. Sometimes you get those. You're like we were for a couple months when we took a break. We were really diving into some plans that needed attention, and
Sure.
it was a good time to pause and hit the brakes for a minute. And after about a year of just pumping out a lot of fun content and had great guests, but these are great for us too. So while you guys enjoy them and they might be helpful and kind of an extension of some of the things that we talk about in our reviews, or when big life moments are happening
Sure.
for clients, hey, we're in the same boat as you. We go through the same things as you, maybe at different times of our lives, but
Yeah.
we play by the same rules, and these help us help you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into today's conversation or topic, and it's on couples and finance. I think oftentimes
That can be scary.
well, there's a lot involved in a relationship, right? And then you get to the point to where finances, which is already a highly emotional, sensitive area, some things can go awry there and lead to major conflict within a relationship. So
Yeah, first of all, you have finances, which can be debilitating
Sure.
in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And then you have communication
yeah,
that I'd say majority of people, they could be doing better.
oh for sure,
They don't
Yeah.
do well.
myself included. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm staring at, there's a big mirror right there. And I see me. There's nobody that's perfect at it. It is
Right.
a skill set
sure.
that people have to be aware of, work on,
Yeah.
slow down, so these are two big topics colliding that are extremely important.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. We'll get into the content of it. But do you have any tips or fun facts of the day? I should say.
no, I brought a little information that'll, add on to what we're talking about. Just a couple things that aren't surprising in here,
Okay.
but are interesting,
Sure.
and eye-opening. So.
Okay. All right. So this is let it be known this is the first time you have not had a stat of the day.
I still no stat of the day today, but there's plenty of good stuff in here.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to the beginning of a relationship, and what often happens is there's something. What we find intriguing in someone else is that there's a difference. We've heard the phrase "opposites attract," right?
Yeah.
And we celebrate that in the beginning of a relationship. It's new, exciting. There's different perspectives or different opinions or different experiences that someone's bringing to the relationship
Sure.
that makes it fun and
Yeah,
exciting.
exciting. Yeah, right.
Well, those same things, as your relationship progresses and we get into their financial, maybe combining finances or discussing finances, that can also, like we were talking about, create conflict, and it's no longer celebrated. It can be a sore point or a sour point in the relationship. So
Yeah.
I want to say that up front, that the whole point of this is to hopefully remind ourselves to be respectful and to try to find a deeper understanding of where our partners are coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially when it comes to finances, because everyone has had a different upbringing when it comes to, what their experience was financially. and now that they're into maybe adulthood, maybe they've had different experiences as well, and then they also have different beliefs and perhaps biases that are put in place from all of these experiences. So
Absolutely.
Yep. And nothing that we talk about today is right or wrong. It's just making sure that we are aware that it's out there, and that this could come up in a conversation that you have.
Oh yeah, you get 100 different couples together and ask them how they do it. They're not all going to look. They'll look similar. You could probably group them in like, okay, these 30 couples kind of do that, and these kind of do that, and whoa, there's a couple outliers.
Sure.
But there's only so many ways that you can do your finances.
Right.
And
sure.
So, again, it's not right or wrong. It's what's going to work and not drive a wedge in between you.
Right.
And is it the most important thing in your relationship? Why or why not?
Right.
So, just the biggest thing that I saw in doing a little quick research on this, and it's none of this is rocket science. Like, most people are going to hear this information and be like, well, of course,
right.
But do we communicate?
Right.
Do we talk about these things? And the biggest thing I saw before you dive into some of the content is that couples that communicate often feel stronger about their financial situation. Like right here, 78% say that money is not their greatest relationship challenge amongst those who think they communicate well.
There you go.
Almost 80%.
Yeah.
If you just took a random poll, or even from our clients, and said, what do you think is the biggest issue in relationships?
I'd say
a lot
finance.
of people would say finance.
Yep. It's money.
So, just things like that. I read that and I'm all, well, duh, that makes perfect sense. But so why aren't more people doing it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother story. I think it's the more we're stuck to our phones and we have easier, quicker ways of communication, I think we're getting further and further away from dialogue. But
absolutely,
we will get into that in a bit. So let's talk about the different perspectives and priorities that might be brought to the table in a relationship. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with we're looking at again, opposites attract. So oftentimes we find meeting with couples that one of the couples focuses more on the relationship side of the interaction, and one is more focused on information. So one is more analytical, maybe data dependent, and sees things as they're looking to solve it. It's either right or wrong, black or white, however you want to spin it. And then the relationship oriented individual typically is looking at things from as a broad overview, and tends to be a little bit more easygoing, a little bit more coachable. And so when you have these two coming together, again, polar opposites, right? And opposites attract. But it's our job as advisors to understand where each client is coming from, and then at the end of the day, coming back with prudent recommendations that satisfy both their needs, right? So we'll get into more of that in a minute. Another area is we often find couples that like to delegate authority. And then you have others that like to take control of it and maintain control. And again, no wrong or right. Oftentimes when we have clients that like to control their own finances or enjoy maybe doing some investing on their own,
absolutely,
we let that be. We let them. We're not trying we're not trying to step on anyone's toes and say, hey, you can't do that. It's all or nothing. We either manage all of your money or we're not having a relationship.
We allow them to celebrate that DIYer experience. Yeah,
exactly. Mm-hmm. But then you also oftentimes you have the other side. The other partner is one that is looking for help. They want that guidance. They want someone's professional opinion to come in and guide them on those investment decisions or financial planning needs.
Okay. Can we pause there for a minute?
Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. In your experience, without, first thing that pops to your head, have you seen more successful relationships financially when people um, really understand their role and almost not turn a blind eye to it, but realize, nope, they're outstanding at that. That's not my role, but I do play a role in a lot of other things that we do. And
Yes.
instead of both trying to be like, well, we both need to contribute to this
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and
Yeah.
and some people get out of their comfort zone, and it can be detrimental instead
Well,
of helpful, almost. And it's not saying, oh, I don't know anything about finances. I know nothing, and he or she is
right.
just, they handle all that. I could see that being a problem.
That's fine.
So where do you find that
and
middle ground?
that's very common.
Yeah.
And
Because we've seen all sorts of dynamics, I mean, in our careers. And
you wanna celebrate the difference, and I say that because you wanna really drive home specific recommendations and maybe some more of the analytical side to the partner that's what they're looking for. But that doesn't mean you don't have them both engaged in the financial planning process.
right.
That's the big difference.
They both need
Is
to be involved.
you don't discount one of the partners just because they're not the finance person.
Right.
They still need to be in every financial planning meeting. They still need to understand what we're doing
Like why we're doing it.
and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need to know the nuts and bolts behind each strategy.
Yeah, there
or
might
the
be one of the
specifics.
partners that they love that. They geek out on it.
Yep.
They're
Mhm.
again, that analytical, they might really enjoy it.
Right.
And the other person's like, it's not really my interest, but I want to know how we're going to retire and
Yeah.
why we're doing what we're doing to get to what
Right.
our goal is.
You need to have that general understanding of what we're doing and why. You don't necessarily need to be an expert in what we're doing and why.
Right.
Yep, exactly. And so then now we get into spending. So we have,
fun.
let's say you have a couple that one has a desire to spend, maybe not spend excessively, but they like to maybe treat themselves. And then you have the other client or the other partner that is really adamant about sticking to a budget.
Are you talking about me?
Are you the budget guy? I don't think so.
I'm not any guy. I'm not showing my cards.
Okay,
on this
very good. So the desire to spend is, let's say someone wants to get their nails done, or every morning they like to go through their specific drive-through for a cup of coffee. Well, we all know that over time that can add up, and unless it's budgeted for, that's not.
We literally put the Starbucks habit in the budget sometimes, in the plan.
Well, sure.
I mean-
Anymore, it's $5 or $6 a day.
I mean,
and,
we're really
yeah.
talking about moving the dial.
So I guess what we want to be aware of is that each partner focuses on or has different levels of importance, and someone may be very, very set on sticking to this budget, and you got to have an understanding of that.
Right.
And then on the other hand, someone really might need their latte every morning, as they drive to work, because that gets them in a place where, they're just more efficient. Or
Totally. Yeah,
So-
it's those little things,
Mhm.
Right. Like, how far do you take the budget at that point? Is it like, we're going to budget down to the penny? Is that necessary?
Well, we'll talk about that because let's just go there now, because there's a difference between impulsive spending and budgeting.
Okay.
Okay, impulsive can get you in trouble, right? I mean, if you're impulsive and you're not really you're a bit reckless with your spending,
Right.
then all of a sudden you have maybe no money in the bank, or you have revolving credit card debt, which is a big one that we really try to avoid with clients. And then also, if you're too disciplined with your budget, well, are you putting some of your personal objectives or personal wants and bucket list items maybe on the back burner because you have to stick to this budget? So there's a bit of a fine line there. For our clients, they know that we tend to put more pressure on their scenario, and
Right.
that means not only do we anticipate a lower than expected return, we model a lower rate of return in their portfolio, but we also add to their expenses. So, we just want to make sure that if they are a bit impulsive, that they have the resources on hand to not get themselves in trouble. and get, maybe caught in the revolving credit card game or.
Yeah, like at what point in a relationship, this is part of the communication piece. At what point are you on your first date and you're, well, you know, down the road, we really need to talk about
Yeah.
what's an amount that we can't just go be impulsive on that the other person would be uncomfortable with, even
Right.
if it's a gift for them
Right.
or are we okay with those things? And obviously that's not that kind of a conversation, but when and is it important to set those kind of boundaries?
Yeah.
It's almost like, here's how I think of it. You want to have the financial piece and the communication piece work. Remove the financial piece from the equation.
Right. Yeah.
And what I mean by that, and don't remove the communication, of course.
No, I see where you're going.
Reinforce the community. Take it out of the equation. Make it a non-thing. It's a problem because it becomes a thing. It's
Sure.
a wedge in between you. Make it not a wedge. Make it something like, let's have your goals in mind. Like, what do we want? What do we both agree that we want in retirement?
Mhm.
Or what are like 3 or 4 non-negotiables in life that we want? Money or no money, whether we had $1 billion or we were broke.
Right.
How do we get there together? And let's not let any noise or other things get in the way of those things.
Right.
What's going to keep us from doing that? Let's not do those things.
Yep.
And let's keep it fresh and keep talking. Because one thing I was reading in here too that I thought was interesting and still makes total sense. It's generational. The priorities are generational.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You talk to baby boomers, it's no surprise that a higher percentage of them than Gen Zers or millennials even feel comfortable about what their retirement looks like.
Right.
They have earned more money. Maybe they've overcome a lot of issues and they've already blazed the trail that a lot of these younger folks are on. And to the flip side, you look at a Gen Zer now, one of the top concerns is, am I ever going to be able to own a home?
Right.
Ever.
Yep.
They're like, how am I going to get there?
Yep.
So it's interesting to see what those priorities are. So you can't just blanket it as, okay, here's one path that you're all going to go on and they were successful, so follow that path.
Yeah.
It's not it. Right?
Well, I think going back to the beginning of a relationship, the last thing you're talking about is finances. You're talking about having fun, right? I mean, it's all about
you're in love.
Yeah, it's the honeymoon phase, right?
Totally.
And you find a lot of couples get into
those
trouble
things are a bummer,
as they've already progressed the relationship, and now all of a sudden, maybe life happens and there's a financial hiccup, and so planning earlier and keeping that open line of communication, my opinion is everything. So
yeah.
So then let's go into you often have a couple or we can be meeting with a couple that where one of the partners is content and very happy with where they're at. They don't really need much more and they're not seeking much more. And on the other hand, the other partner is fairly ambitious. Okay. So why that can create a conflict is it can be seen as, let's say from the person that's content, they can be seen as maybe not having a real, I guess, desire to build the future.
They might be accused of like, are you like, why aren't you more
you
involved?
care?
Do you get, do you realize, is this like just willy nilly or?
Right.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, the ambitious person can be seen as maybe even a threat because
domineering.
Well, that's aggressive.
Yeah.
Why do you need so much? Why do we have to keep down this path? We're good. Life's good. So
yeah.
But without having an understanding of what your partner's what's driving those behaviors, and it could create that conflict. And,
yeah.
And then the last one I want to talk about is when it comes to asset allocation or risk tolerance. Is this happens a lot? We have one partner where they're more conservative and the other one's more growth oriented or aggressive. Well, how do you appease both of them? Well, I'd say you do a plan. we tell this to we tell this to clients all the time, or especially prospective clients, that we don't know how to manage your money until we've gone through the financial planning exercise.
Totally,
because until we pull back the veil and have a true understanding of where they're at financially and the amount of risks they're taking on, and what the amount of risk they need to take on to get to where they want, how are we going to tell them what's wrong or right? Now,
Mm.
there are, more often than not, we can appease both clients as long as they have their own pool of investable assets.
Yeah.
Maybe we can be a little bit more conservative in some areas and more growth oriented, but collectively, the couple or the household needs to be managed a certain way as far as risk.
I like that piece of the plan. That reminds me of, there's been so many times that we've sat down at the table, the dinner table here, and you can tell when we're doing an initial draft of a plan presentation. It's an interesting moment for a lot of clients that especially have not been through this process before, or are nearing a big life moment like retirement. It's looming. It's within 5 years maybe, and
Sure.
they're sometimes worried to hear, like, have I done enough, or what is this looking like, or are we going to get in an argument about this? Or I think the plan is all about exposure and reinforcement. It's going to expose some shortcomings, and it's going to reinforce maybe some good habits. So you're going to get some pats on the back and maybe a couple light hand taps on some of the things that you've been doing up to this point. And the last thing anyone wants to hear is, well, you can't do that anymore.
Stop this,
Stop
and this.
doing that. Or, well, you're kind of behind, and, but I think it's a very good exercise. What I have seen though is couples or partners come in and they're sitting down, and you can tell there's a little bit of anxiety or tension between them.
Yep.
But more often than not, even after that initial draft review, which is not our last meeting, it's one of the first meetings of many,
right?
Because it's this live animal at this point. I've seen a lot of people kind of leave. They seem closer, and it brings people closer. And if it drives you apart for a moment, that's okay. It's just exposing something that you might need to address.
Maybe there was a lack of communication in certain areas.
But I've seen more people I've seen people go, that's a good point, honey, that he's making here,
Right.
Let it take it off you guys. It's not about you guys necessarily. It's about the commonality of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And how do we get there together? It's almost like a renaissance of a relationship moment.
It can be. Yeah, absolutely. Because, for most people that haven't been through the financial planning exercise, you've been saving, you've been doing things and moving along your life, your financial life, and with kind of hopes that it's all going to work out, right?
Yeah.
Wishful thinking. And regardless of the outcome of the plan, it's still good to go through the plan because at least you know where you stand.
Totally. I agree.
I think that's why you see people, even if it's not, the best information that we're having to report back to them, and there's some work to do, at least they know.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. How many people would be like, that are post 65 and they're like, gosh, I wish I would have done this at like 40, 35, even the information is going to change, but mindset, instilling some decent habits and sleeping well at night, even if it's not the best news, knowing will give you some peace.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what can you do to manage these differences in a relationship? I think we've talked about it maybe 30 times in this podcast already. It's communication. It's dialogue. Dialogue is everything. And that goes beyond, I think, probably financial issues within a relationship. But
totally,
again, one of those no duh moments. But keep that line of communication open. Having an awareness of your partner's financial background, their biases, what their experiences were as a kid, maybe growing up, or as a young adult. That's everything. Because then things start making sense as to why they have certain behaviors or certain perspectives on how finances should be managed. Okay?
Yeah, it's almost check your ego at the door.
Yeah,
couples out there. Seriously, celebrate. Let's use what you have some strength. Let's use these as strengths instead of looking at them as weaknesses.
Right.
If the finances is not your thing, as people say,
Right.
don't try to make it your thing.
No.
But be involved and respect the other person, that your loved one, your best friend,
Right.
you know, celebrate them and allow them to do what they're good at. Don't make it no resentment, no like guilt.
Well, I was just going to touch on that.
You guys are a team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're going through, or there's something financially going on in the relationship, or that you're holding back your thoughts, what happens when you hold back your thoughts?
Yeah.
What does that eventually create? It creates resentment.
100%.
And if you sit on resentment too long, what happens there? Yeah, conflict. There's,
And again, let's remember too, there's nothing wrong with conflict.
no.
Conflict means things are happening. You know, there's emotion, there's action. Conflict is fine, but you need to manage conflict respectfully, tactfully. You know, this isn't the financial argument, the pressure that finances can be, I think, can be alleviated with a little respect, humility, and planning.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
just a little bit. A little bit can go a long way. Start the process. You know, continue to have these discussions and talk to them. Talk to your kids about it. Talk to your family about it. I mean, this is everyone's in this together.
Yeah. Hopefully this allows you to start celebrating your differences.
Yeah.
Just like you did in the beginning of your relationship.
It's right.
Right? Isn't that going back to opposites attract? Look, we don't need to think the same way. Right?
Yeah, and that's boring. Seriously. Like there's plenty to do anyway. Let's keep it fresh.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I enjoyed this topic. I think this is finance, but it's also universal. There's a little bit of just a reminder of humanity here, and I love it. So, well, we appreciate you tuning in. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover specifically, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll see you next time.